Hi, everyone. I'm so honored to be here today with Xavier Dagba. He is a beacon of light, and I first intersected with your work, Xavier, through Instagram, actually, and
Mm.
Substack. I've been reading your words throughout my own journey, and I just feel like there's such a layer of support through my own insecurities as someone that's very creative and someone in transition from trusting what my calling is versus what I've associated as acceptable in society or by the standards of, the conditionings of what we grow up in. So I'm so excited to have you here and just really dive into your work and your story. Thank you for being here on Ritual of Wild.
Well, it's my pleasure. First, I'll say thank you because your words are very affirming, and also it's a pleasure to be here and to just see where the conversation is gonna go because I feel like we are living in a world in transition. Like the collective at large is going through this massive transition. What is expected of me and what is my heart demanding? So we are collectively going through that.
Yeah, I love that. I've been listening to some of the shows you've been on and just like looking back at some of your reels, and something that really stood out for me that has been a theme that has echoed throughout my own life is a quote you shared, and it says, "There is no breath where we are disconnected from God."
Hmm.
And I would really love to dive into that because I myself am recultivating my relationship with God. I grew up Catholic. I believe you did as well. And it's as a mother of a 3 and 1 year old and being in my early 40s now. And those are all just labels. Like it doesn't even really matter. But I place emphasis on them because they have brought me at a trajectory through which I question so much. And yet I want that relationship again in a way I'd never had it before, because when I was younger, it was kind of forced upon me. So it was through the
Hmm.
lens of my lineage, my parents, which is totally fine. But now it's coming from a deeper place of like curiosity and wonder. So I'd love to know for you, there is no breath where we are disconnected from God. What does this mean to you? And how did you come to bring that to the world, those
Yeah.
words?
How that came about, it's like, as seekers, spiritual seekers, as I like to think of people in this line of work as growth enthusiasts. There is this deep intimacy with the divine that we long for. And then there are also the moments where we completely feel disconnected from that essence, where you feel disconnected from your mojo, where you feel less than worthy of the divine, worthy of, being worthy of your light itself. The moments where you feel down, where you feel beat down, or depressed to a certain degree. And these moments can carry very thick and dense energies, where you might feel lost, you might feel completely without direction. And these are the moments where we are assuming that we are disconnected from the divine, disconnected from God. And I like to think that these are the moments where what is actually holding us is that inner divinity because we don't know how to hold ourselves during these moments. So it's that phrase is a reminder that we have these moments where we don't know how to love ourselves, especially for many people who are kind of like devoted to the path of integration and expansion and self-actualization. We place such a high value on being in alignment, feeling connected, being attuned. We have such a high value on that to the point where we have a hard time accepting ourselves when we don't feel in these states.
Mhm.
When we feel that our mood is out of whack, our vibration is shitty, and your kids trigger you left, right, and center. In these moments of disconnection, we have a hard time accepting ourselves. And that was just a reminder that, especially in these moments, it's usually where that inner divinity is in you is attempting to get louder. There's just no freaking breath where you could be disconnected from it, even if you tried. And you can try hard enough. And what is I find beautiful is if you believe in such a thing as your guides and your guide, your spirit team, they will honor your wish and they'll be like, okay, we're going to give you space, but there is no way we are letting go or disconnecting from you. We are still here. We're going to give you more space. You believe that we are separated from you. Okay. We going to reinforce that impression eventually, but we're here. The very moment you give us permission to come a little closer, we are going to inundate you with that feeling of love that you remember so well. So, yeah, that's what I could say about it.
I love that so much. And it makes me think of the way I pray or I am in conversation with God. I remember one time I was going through a rough time with my kids, and I was like, could you show me the way to grace, like in these moments of challenge, and just show me the way, use me as a portal of that grace, you know? And
Yeah.
that day, everything that I could have thought of as grace was like the complete opposite. It was upside down, chaos, short tempers, like kids losing their minds, me losing my mind. But then I leaned into like all of that chaos and I was just like, I said a prayer this morning because I'm already having a hard time. And it felt like I was at this intersection of there's a choice here. Like there's a stillness in the chaos, and like God doesn't drop grace right into your lap because grace is just there. It's always flowing. For me in that moment, it felt like this is where I can choose to either be stuck in the frustration or I can choose to see it in another light. And in that moment, I just really felt the grace come in. So I guess what I'm trying to say, it was almost as if through my own will and through my own power of choice, I was able to connect with what was already there, even though I was praying for it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that, it speaks a lot to the power that we have in terms of like allowing. It's like,
Yeah.
how much are you allowing yourself to have a conscious relationship with that grace, with that inner divinity? How much are you allowing yourself to welcome it, to even invite it? There's so much power in there. I think it is Shaman Durek. I'm not sure if you, anyways,
Oh yeah.
it, yeah,
I've read
on
his book.
social, yeah, absolutely. Spirit hacking is his book. He's,
Mm,
he has a definition of God that I like a lot. And the definition of God is, tell me, who do you want me to be for you now?
mm,
What I mean by that is we are constantly informing informing the divine. It's like, tell me, who do you want me to be for you right now? Meaning it is God or spirit asking you this question in every now moment. If you want me to be, this kind of like old man in the sky who's gonna judge you for all your sins, I'm gonna be that for you. If you want to live in a reality where I am vengeful, angry, or I don't know, God that you need to be afraid of, I'll be that for you. If you want to live in a reality where I am a benevolent one, and where grace is accessible, I'm going to be that for you. If you choose the reality where, in this moment of massive disruption in your household, where your kids are going crazy, your nervous system is dysregulated, and you could use some more grace there, and you actually believe that the grace is accessible, just like one choice away,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to be that for you, meaning the universe around you reflects that as well. So it's one that I like a lot. And I keep seeing that manifesting itself, actualizing itself in my life. So yeah, yeah.
That's so great that you see it manifesting in your life so much because I've heard a bit of your story through other podcasts, and I would love for you to share a little bit of it here if you could, because
hmm
I feel like you walk the walk and talk the talk just based
I
on
do
your
my
own journey.
best.
You do a great job. So if you could share
Mm.
your story a little bit just to give context to how you came to this work and what led you here.
Well, context to how I came to this work is I've been avoidant with this work for the longest time. And yeah, for the longest time. And I often invite people to pay attention. We hear a lot online of like, in psychology, attachment style. And
Mm,
I often invite people to pay attention to their attachment style with their brightness, with their calling. And I had the most avoidant, attachment ever with my calling. It was like, First, I didn't understand it. I didn't know what box I could enter into. Initially, I was really working on being a PhD in economics. In 2013, I was involved in a PhD in economics. And after 1 year in it, I was just like, yeah, this is not like I don't have within me the energy to animate this anymore. Even though I had a nice scholarship, fully paid and all of these different things, all of these nice reasons why I could have continued, I should have continued. And also my grades the first year didn't justify dropping off, but my heart was no longer there. And I tried to sell myself the thought of like finishing the program, of staying in there for like 4 more years so that I can just get the degree. And then after that, I will do something else. I couldn't. And
Mm,
yeah, and it was a time of like, kind of deep redefinition of myself. So after a few months in like a deep dark place, depression, and like I call that a spiritual it's like everything around you kind of slows down so that you are able to be recalibrated. It was several months of being in there. I think in towards the end of 2014, I just decided I can no longer do this. I cannot do this. So I dropped out. But I was already involved in a lot of like spiritual work, even since, let's say, 2006, 2007. I was already in there, but just like learning for myself, just ingurgitating as much material as I could. We often have these moments of like spiritual awakening where we just want to swallow everything that we touch, everything we see. And that was
mm,
my path from like, let's say, 2006, 2007 to 2000 and 2014, really. I was just like swallowing everything I could. So when I came to Montreal in 2013, I went in a PhD program in, yeah, back then, 2014, I decided I'm going to drop out. And it creates
mm,
just the biggest rift in all my relationships back then. Like people think I'm crazy. Family, I was born and raised in Cameroon, that is in the central region of Africa. Everybody was just thinking I was nuts. And I don't
mm.
blame them. I don't blame them. Blame them. I consider myself as a little nuts that moment. It was a little bit of a full move, and I'm very conscious of it. It's like I had nothing backing me, had literally zero, nothing backing me. And I just decided to take that leap.
Wow.
And I had to start reconfiguring or recalibrating myself the way I think, finding ways to support myself. Okay, I'm not doing the PhD now. Now what? What is something that comes close to the work that you really want to do, which is like supporting people in their journey, helping them transform, helping them heal, yet I feel insecure about fully embracing that. What is even being a coach or a guide, a facilitator? It's like, how can I explain that to my parents when they ask me what I'm doing? So I decide I'm going to find proxy, something that comes close to it. Like I'm going to be a health and fitness coach. And I went there. And we even opened a gym at some point in Montreal. And I was still sure as hell, this is not really it. So I've had many shadow careers. I did network marketing. At some point, I tried to create a t-shirt store online. I did so many different things. I worked as a chef for 5 years. You know, I did everything I could to see if there was a way I could feel fulfilled without fully surrendering to that calling. And there wasn't.
Mm,
There wasn't. And I've had moments of dealing with massive anxiety attacks that I often call shadow flares. When your light is calling you and you keep resisting, it's as if your body just starts overreacting to let you know that, hey, the voice you keep ignoring requires your attention. So, yeah, that's a little bit of the path. And I've had to learn surrender a little bit the hard way, dealing with like hard blows, feeling isolated, alienated, feeling humiliated, you know, having people that went into the PhD with me that graduated, had the massive jobs in the big organizations, and they were just like, bro, you were the top of our class. What the hell is going on with you? Is that the spell from your village? What is freaking happening? And I was like, my heart is no longer there. So standing in the fire of that initiation is usually a journey that many, many people run away from. And that was my, that was shadow work at its finest. It was, how can I illuminate all my blind spots? How can I meet the fear of humiliation, the shame I was running from, and allow myself to sit with the wounded aspects of me and learn how to descend love in these aspects of me so that I can make more room for what I'm here to do? That is the premise of all of my work. It's like every single time your light is calling you forth, and part of you is saying, no, love needs to be descended. It's like you need to bring more light in these aspects, around these aspects of you that are afraid of the outcomes, responsibilities, consequences that may come with embracing more of your fullness. It is not by suppressing them or trying to run away from them. It is by descending love, meaning, can I sit with you? Can I understand what is going on? Can I engage you? What do you see here in this calling that is scaring the shit out of you? Is it just the unknown, or is it the umbrella term we tell ourselves to just not fully get in touch with the core of the problem? Because we use a lot of umbrella terms. Or I'm just self-sabotaging. I'm just procrastinating. Oh, I'm just afraid of the unknown. It's like all of these are umbrella terms, but there's something about our resistance or fears. I have a mentor that uses this phrase. They are site specific,
Site
meaning
specific.
site specific, meaning they are seeing something specific about the direction where you're going. And that specific thing carries a flavor of fear that part of you is not really okay with. And when you are able to illuminate precisely, okay, what is here that I see? Or that a part of me sees here? That is really deflating me. What is that? How can I be with it? So to sum things up, that's what my journey has been, or part of it. It's just like the big overarching story.
Mm.
Even though there are many, many chapters, and the ultimate lesson has been, you know, conscious surrender. Yeah.
I can feel my heart pounding as you share that. I feel like I just received like a sermon of the heart from your heart, like
Mm,
direct. And thank you. You could see I'm getting emotional because I feel like on so many levels, I know I for sure can relate to it. I know my partner can relate to it. There's certain
mm,
aspects of what you just shared that really stood out for me. And one of them was the part where you tried to look for the closest proxy you could to that calling of wanting to help steward people on their journey, but no matter how close you got to it, you knew it wasn't it. You knew that you
yeah.
still had to go deeper. And then the second part, speaking to like when we're learning to trust ourselves and that calling and that light, that it's a notion of descent. It isn't always about this glamorous sexy language of like claiming your highest self and looking towards external parts of degrees, letters behind our name, or more courses and certifications to validate what you deep down know. I feel like that's so common for people that want to do this work, step into
Yeah.
coaching. And it's hard for some people, including myself, to even say the word coaching. When you said, what
Yeah.
even is a coach? I was like,
Yeah.
yes, what is that? Like, because I feel like so much of my work speaks to that. And I struggle to name it. And
Yeah.
even as I say that, it's funny because it's like I can hear that intuitive part of me that's like, yes, you do know. Like you don't have to define it, but in order to be able to for people to find you, I have this message in my brain that's like you need to define it. And I feel like it's
Yeah.
putting me in a box and what my work is cannot be put in a box if that lands in some degree. So thank you for
Absolutely.
saying all that.
Yeah. I think many people might see themselves in that. It's so difficult to try to put into a box something that actually does not want to be put in a box,
Yeah.
because that thing doesn't really want to be put in a box. Of course, it's going to have an expression. Of course, it's going to look like, I don't know, like being a steward of light in your own unique way. And it is by engaging in that conscious relationship with your brightness that you get to find it. You get
Mm.
to explore what it looks like. It's really the best way I can put that. Um, yeah. You mentioned something that's so important. It is the journey of dissension that is also parallel to the expansion of, what some people like to call ascension. As as much as you're claiming your higher self, your higher self is also claiming you.
Mhm.
And what that means is it's this kind of like dual movement. An aspect of you is being elevated, another part of you is being descended.
Mhm.
And the dissension is when you bring love to what you saw as the most unlovable parts of you before. And that's
Yeah.
where most people struggle. Like they're sending love to the aspects of you that you've been conditioned to see as the most unlovable, the aspects of you that teachers before have told you, or you are just resisting, or you are just in resistance. It's like, can you bring love there too? And see
Yeah.
what that part of you has to say. Can you learn how to skillfully engage what is perceived as darkness? Because it has darkness, my understanding of it at the moment, it is just wisdom that hasn't been actualized yet.
Mm.
So, and the more we do that, the more, you know, we can claim gifts. Yeah.
I find that to be such a very helpful reframe because you spoke to something earlier I wanted to circle back
Mm.
to, which was I can't remember the term you used, but it's like when you suppress something, your body finds ways to express it in the form of pain or discomfort for you to give it
Hmm.
attention. Like, for example, if someone was wanting to use their voice and start a podcast or speak on stages, maybe they might have continuous sore throats or coughs or like an energetic calcification that takes place until you can get to the root of it. Do you believe that happens in that sense? Like energetically, say, for example, you're an athlete, but you're overriding because you said you like to train and work with nutrition as well. Did you find that if you could not cultivate a relationship with rest as an athlete, for example, would your body express pain that gave you no other option but to rest? Like, could you
Oh,
trust that
absolutely.
resting is the journey as well?
It is a huge part of it. It's like your body is literally gonna, put you on house arrest if you're not willing to listen. There's a new branch of like medicine. Well, maybe new branch is not really the word, but there's such a thing as German new medicine, and it
Oh,
speaks a
yeah.
lot about how the body will express what you repress.
Mm,
you know and most people like to look at the body as the storehouse of the shadow, but everything you repress doesn't go away. And my personal experience with it was in the there was a time where I knew I was supposed to let go of the gym we had in Montreal. We're talking
mhm,
about 2017, and it was so clear that okay, that this endeavor had expired. But I was like, holy shit, we've got so much money into this. I don't know, it's like I had all my rationales why I couldn't do it, didn't want to do it, all of that. And you know what? Around that time, as healthy as I was trying to be in my life, I started developing asthma. And
interesting.
when you start looking at all the when I started really exploring the meanings behind the asthma, it's like, it's your breath. Besides resisting life itself, there's also the meaning of like deep sadness and grief that hasn't really been fully processed and acknowledged. And
Mhm,
a part of me was still trying to hold onto an idea of myself that was no longer meant to be.
mm,
Part of me was still, a part of me was still even attempting to hold on to the persona that I had built, being this kind of academic and like working towards a PhD, and I needed to do this thing that was supposed to be so big and blah blah blah. There was like just a divine humbling. Let me just put it that way. I was resisting the undoing that often comes with like building a new foundation. And when I decided, you know what, in 2018 we shut down the gym, you know um and that was still in 2017. I would just decide, okay, in 2018 we out of here. I'm gonna find ways to redirect my life, and I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'm gonna experiment. We're gonna find out. And what happened is, during that year 2018, it was also the year where, before the end of the year, all the symptoms of the asthma went away. That's my
wow.
personal experience. Maybe there is more that went into it that I'm not aware of. But that was the major shift that happened. It's like a heaviness just lifted off my chest. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, why are you still attempting to keep yourself into places where you no longer belong? That was the teaching. I feel like the first form of self-abandonment that we learn is abandoning our light.
Mm.
It is not necessarily repressing our pain, because that too is a form of self-abandonment when we repress our pain. I think of it as original sin, even though it has nothing to do. It's, to me, it's not biblical. Or it's not, I think the first thing we do, even by incarnating on this earth plane, that original sin is, I am going to leave my fullness behind and I'm going to take human form. So the decision to be human, it is to abandon our brightness to a certain degree.
Mm.
And then we replicate that kind of like original self abandonment in many different ways. Oh, I want love from you. I'm going to learn how to repress an aspect of me that you don't like. I want
Mm.
appreciation from you. I'm going to repress some of, you don't like this aspect of my light, or you criticize this aspect of my fullness. I'm going to learn how to amputate so
So
that you
true.
can accept me. So I really consider that to be the original wound, the original sin, if you wish. And there comes a moment where choosing consciously to abandon yourself again, especially to abandon your brightness, to abandon your calling, it is the most costly, energetically costly decision you will ever make. Your body records that so strongly. At the very least, my body right now, it
Mm.
records these choices so strongly, to the point where it might take me a month or two or whatever, but I'm gonna be like, okay, you know what? That's fine. You got me. I'm gonna surrender. Okay? I'm gonna surrender. So that's what I can say about the whole thing.
I feel like as you're speaking, we're standing on like this cliff and there's a precipice that's taking place in which so many of us that can connect with what you're saying, they're feeling this, well, because I'm feeling it, so I feel like other listeners might be feeling it too, but this palpable inspiration and fear that is dancing between one foot in this world of expressing, living from your authenticity, and your other foot that is still sort of connected with our attachments because
Yeah.
safety, right? Like what our brain tells us
Yeah.
is predictable and it can. I always say the brain can perceive, the mind can perceive this material plane with our senses, but the heart can conceive beyond it. And how do we begin as humans to connect with that divinity? And yet I feel like it's through our whole allowance of our humanity that allows us to connect with that divinity. But
Yeah.
that's not always reachable for some people. And it's not always reachable for me. I feel like I'm working on it. But like, how did you do it? How did you hear, like, I want to steward people and then start to shape that through the journey?
Yeah. I think the journey has there are two parts of it. The first part I would say is to tend to the part of you that is saying no in the dark. I'm going to say more about it.
Mm,
Usually, when we want to be liberated, we just want to see beyond the stuckness. We want to see on the other side of everything that feels, we don't want to spend time with what feels sticky and stagnant.
mhm,
And I understand that. It makes sense. It's like absolutely makes sense. So what I'm going to say right now is very counterintuitive, because
mm,
usually when we feel stuck and afraid, we don't want to look into the resistance. We just want to look into, okay, what is it that I need to do so that I can be over there? What is it that I need to do so that my energy flows like that? And that's a valid question, by the way. I don't want to sound as if it's meaningless. I've seen that a good starting point could be, okay, what really scares me about letting go of this, about embracing this path, is to romance the part of me that is in the darkness, or in the stickiness, or in the stagnation, because self liberation begins here. It actually starts here. The destination is also here.
Mm-hmm.
which means what is here is what you start with. If I'm feeling stagnant, I'm going to lean in there. If I'm feeling resistance, I'm going to have a conversation with the resistant part of me. I'm going to be like, okay, the fears that I'm projecting into this leap that I want to make is, and these fears, the pain from the past that they are reminding me of, that I don't trust myself to be able to move through. Is it a version of, I've seen that in my work, there are five more, five main fears that we sometimes have a hard time dealing with. The first one, the fear of humiliation. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, am I going to make a fool of myself? Am I going to be ridiculed? Am I going to get shamed? Especially by people that I give a shit about, people that I really care about. Are they going to think I'm stupid? The fear of humiliation. Am I going to embarrass myself and feel shame publicly? You know, it's a big deal. It's a big deal because there is still sometimes the 15-year-old version of you that, I don't know, felt embarrassed in front of like your crush in high school, and
Mm-hmm.
embarrassment left a scar that you didn't know how to be with. And part of you is like, nope, I never again want to put myself in that kind of situation. So we usually have like emotional unfinished business that are fierce in our resistance they are asking of us to address. It's not a fear, the fear of alienation or exclusion. It's like there are some people that I want to make sure that I keep in my life, but I am actually fearing that if I allow my authentic self to lead the way, that these people might think I'm a freak or want to, go away. I don't know. So usually we also have that kind of fear inside. And I can keep going on and on. The fear of loss is a big one,
Mm-hmm.
which is the third one. And the fear of loss is like, you know what? Embracing my calling might cause me to lose status. I mean, it did for me. It might cause me to lose money. It might cause me to lose relationships. It might cause me to lose so many things, that it might cause me to lose. Am I willing to pay the price of that? And also, what else am I losing by choosing not to lose all these other things? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
what else I'm losing by choosing not to risk losing all these other things that I'm attached to? And usually it has a flavor of like your connection to your own inner self, your connection to your light that you're losing. Other fears, the fear of persecution. It's like, okay, you might go out there and use your voice and share your light, and maybe get attacked. Having some comments. Let me just pause here. I'm not sure if you can you still hear me well? I have
I can
so many
still hear you well.
notifications.
Your audio is right on track, but your image is kind of lagging, but that's okay.
Okay, okay.
As long as you see
So,
me and hear me okay, I'm hearing everything you're saying loud and clear. It's just
oh, I
your
see you and hear you.
visual
Okay.
is a little bit lagging, that's all.
Maybe I should have gone with an easier camera. I'm sorry. This is in the middle of the recording.
It's okay, it's going to get edited. So
Okay,
we're
perfect.
human. It's the way it goes, right? It's all good.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
but back to the fears, if you feel like riffing on that a
yeah,
little bit more,
the
because
fear
it,
of persecution. It's like I'm gonna put myself out there and I may get attacked. I may
yeah.
get some nasty comments on the internet. And the other one, the last one, the fifth fear is the fear of death, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
I'm gonna have to lose an aspect of myself, probably. A part of me is gonna need to die to a certain degree. So there's a
Mm,
death involved with transformation to a certain degree. It's like, am I willing to go through that rite of passage? So there are all these fears that are usually pointing at a no old, ancient, emotional, and finished business that we get to resolve. So usually the invitation here is, okay, can I go tend to the part of me that is still afraid of that? Can
mm,
I feel what wasn't felt before? This time around, I'm going to feel it to completion. Can I explore what are the needs of that aspect of me and how I can meet these needs without rejecting my calling? And now, on the other side, it is, can I practice small acts of boldness? Small acts that may feel like I'm a tiny bit outrageous, a little bit.
mm,
Small acts of defiance towards my limiting conditioning. And these small acts, tiny acts, I'm not talking about, choosing you're going to move on the other side of the world necessarily and things like that. But tiny acts that make you feel like, okay, I am living on the other side of my edge.
Mm,
I think that is something important to also starting begin to cultivate. And the more we are able to cultivate that, what it's going to do is it builds more trust with your brightness, because many people have this kind of fear that I'm going to name. They don't trust their light to keep them safe. I'm not sure if you've noticed that for yourself, but for many people, the big thing is, I trust my smallness to keep me safe. I even trust darkness to keep me safe. And I don't trust my light to keep me safe. People usually fight me on this, but I'm just like, every time your heart is inviting you to embrace a specific thing and you say no, basically what you are also saying, and there's no judgment, it's actually very neutral and factual.
mm,
What you're saying when you say no to your light is also saying, I trust not being in my light to keep me safe. In other words, I trust darkness to keep me safer than I trust light to keep me safe. It's a
mm.
silent affirmation of that we make, and something we need to look in the eye and then consciously build, a new relationship with a brightness, of a new relationship of trust. So these are some of the words I can say about it.
I love what you said about those five fears. And I feel like we don't talk about, well, I don't know if normal is even the word, like normalizing those fears, but I just, I feel like it's so much a part of the journey that because it's
Mm-hmm.
not openly explored, we turn away from it as if it would connect us as being flawed or define us as being not enough, and all struggle with the not enoughness as it is. And so I often say, like, do you feel like it's true that it's not that people are afraid of having power with their light? It's usually what happens after that we don't talk about the responsibility that comes with it, the element of grief, the fear of death, the social aspect of how much of that dynamic will shift. I just feel like that comes with the very unsexy parts of the journey that we have to constantly flex like a discipline muscle, where we are moving through cultivating that courage by taking the steps. But we
Yes.
can't actually know it until we go through it. And that's really, it's like a hard concept for us to understand because it's
It's a
like
difficult.
it's
Yeah.
so difficult. And I feel like when we rub up against that, it's easy if we're not in the work of wanting to have tea with those fears and those darknesses, those shadow aspects, and not even tea, but just leaning into it. I feel like when we come up against that, we either calcify, we stay stuck, or we decide, like, oh, it must mean that I'm not meant to walk down this path, when really I feel like it's just another doorway that's being invited for you to move through.
Oh, yes, absolutely. The framework that I like to give to people is, imagine that you have these two aspects of you that are looking for ways to start working together. You have the human self, and then
Hmm.
you have your higher self. And your higher self comes with, like, here's your intuition, here's the calling, here's why we want, or sometimes it's not even clear. Sometimes you're just like, okay, this is no longer working. There must be something better out there. Look for it.
Yeah.
And then your human self is right here. Your human self, by the way, which is the one that is dealing with the 3D aspects of your life. The one that is dealing with the fears, the one that is dealing with your bills at the end of the month, the one that is dealing with, I don't know, taking care of your family and your relationships and all of that. And we have a tendency to take the human self for granted.
Mm.
What I mean by that is, like, we have the expectations on our human self. I should just follow my intuition, or whatever my higher self says. I should just follow that. And I
Mm.
should just do this. And I should just surrender. And I should just leap into the unknown. Even though it's freaking the shit out of me. I don't even know what I'm going to do there. And then your human self is like, well, on my dead freaking body. It's like, I'm gonna be the one that has to deal with the consequences of your freaking surrender. I'm gonna be the one that has to deal with the consequences of you following your intuition. I'm gonna be the one that has to deal with like, okay, at the end of the month, bills need to be paid or whatever needs to be paid so that I can keep existing in this world of duality. So I need you to pay attention to what I actually freaking need, says
Mm-hmm.
your human self. That's
Yes.
the whole reason why we do shadow work so that you can sit at the table with your call it lower self, call it ego. You know, you can look at it with condescension, but that part of you holds great power. And if you don't bring that part of you on board, all the other endeavors are just like flat.
Mm.
They are very flat. So there's an invitation to be like, okay, what scares me is what the needs that I really value are, how I can begin to you know, take responsibility for these needs in a new way, in a way that doesn't imply rejecting my calling. What that looks like is these fears that I need to address, what they are pointing at is the aspects of me that this human self or lower self or shadow self is attempting to tell me, hey, you don't know how to love this aspect of you yet. And then, sorry, you're going to go out there, you're going to express yourself, bring your authenticity, and someone might make a comment that brings up profound shame that you haven't demonstrated to yourself you know how to be with. What
Mm-hmm.
then? You know, so it's a very practical thing where when you look at it with the proper lens, everything inside of you is contributing towards your self liberation, even your human self, even your lower self. When your shadow flares up, it is literally saying, this is what I need you to find a way to love so that
Mm-hmm.
I can fully back you up when you pursue that endeavor. This is what I need you to resolve within yourself so that I can fully back you up when you pursue that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you start embracing that integrative framework, the more you start realizing there's nothing inside of me that is playing against me, even when it doesn't look like it.
Mm.
And it's a very liberating thought to play with. That
So
everything inside of you is in your favor, even when it doesn't look like it. And if you still think it is opposing you, it's because you haven't looked at it in the right frame of mind.
thank you for saying that. And I'm curious for you because that would, I feel like it's easier for some people to receive that than others. How might you
Hmm.
deliver that with someone who's gone through just like brutal hardship,
Yeah.
like the death of a child or
Hmm.
a disability that they cannot see past, or, and there's obviously like life has so many different layers. It's just how do
Yeah.
you begin to tell someone who's just on their knees and just, I have no idea how to see beyond this. Someone in deep depression, even, or, you know.
How I begin to do that, it's I don't even need to tell them that. It's like we're just gonna be with what is here, period.
Mm,
I don't even need to do anything else other than other than being with what is here. If there is depression here, I'm going to fully engage it.
yeah.
You know, if there is grief here, we're going to fully engage it. Like fully engage it. This is literally what our human selves and our like our wounding and our pain is asking of us. It's like, can you fully, I don't need you to reframe anything for me. I don't need, it's like these aspects of you don't need you to change their mind. They
Mm,
just need a ascension of love. And that's what I mean by that. If there is pain in your body, can you be with it? Like
mhm,
fully, can you let it stretch your heart? If there is grief there, can you let it process you? Instead of you looking at it as something that you process, can you let it process? Can you let it process you? Like
yeah.
with these people, sometimes what I've seen, these people are not the ones that I have the hardest time with, to be
Mm,
quite honest. Because usually with them, the assignment is simple.
mm,
We're going to sit at the altar of the hardship and the pain with as much curiosity, compassion, and open heartedness as we can access. And the more we are able to access that, and the more we are able to let what is there, what wasn't felt, be felt, what
mm,
wasn't seen, be seen, what couldn't be expressed. There is something that the human psyche does naturally when you bring a process to completion. It creates spaciousness. It creates spaciousness until the person will naturally come up with like, okay, now what? Until the person will naturally come up with like, okay, because usually people who truly struggle, who really truly struggle, are the ones that are trapped inside of like, they have the awareness of the pain and the
Mm,
resistance to the pain. Those are the
yes.
people who truly struggle. They are aware of the pain and they are also feeling under resourced, emotionally ill equipped to surrender to the pain. When somebody is in conscious relationship with the pain and the person is like surrendered to the hardship and they allow themselves to really be with everything that it feels inside, this person is demonstrating a degree of bravery and courage that will
Mm,
take them all the way through on the other side. So you people who might actually have a hard time receiving it are the ones to whom I would say, hey, you know what? You've been running away from this fear, this pain, and you've been projecting it to every single thing. You've been projecting that pain you've been running from to every single thing that looks a little bit scary out there. How about as slowly and gently as we can, we turn towards it and we allow ourselves to go towards it, as fully as we can. That is a very practical thing. I didn't need to force feed them their light. And I think
right.
we cannot really do that. We cannot really force feed to people the brightness. It is something that they have in their own way. They have to become intimate with it in their
Mm.
own way.
That reminds me of something you wrote, and it had something that was speaking to the nervous system and saying how your nervous system isn't fragile. It actually is quite powerful because it carries all the things. I don't want to mess up your words, but it carries all the things I think we don't acknowledge.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit. Have you done work around the nervous system and just noticed like the powerful correlation of how it does carry what we will not consciously bring to light?
Absolutely. I really think, this sometimes it's difficult for people to hear, but I really believe that the nervous system itself is not fragile. It is usually overloaded. It is strained, because it has been already handling so much.
Yeah.
If you agree with the statement, the body keeps the score, which is it carries the pain that we haven't allowed ourselves to fully resolve yet. Pain is here in your psyche. It's in your system somewhere. Meaning, all the decades you haven't allowed yourself to deal with it, to be with it. Part of you had to carry the charge. So your nervous system has had to carry the charge. Your body, your psyche has had to carry this charge. I challenge you to pick up a 5 pound weight
Mm,
and to hold it in a curl position for like a whole day, or even for an hour. Just hold it in, to hold it in a position where the muscle is contracted, where you are actually carrying the weight for more than an hour. That muscle is going to be, in pain.
mm,
That to me is not fragility. That to me is like a huge level of strength. So what I'm usually mirroring to people is if you could just imagine what it's taken to your body, what it's taken to your nervous system to carry this thing for decades. For some people, it's literally decades.
mhm.
Man, you've done some heavy lifting. You know what? You know how to be with this pain. And there's a part of you that is just waiting for you to to do that exercise consciously because we are unconsciously stretching the nervous system. We are unconsciously being with pain. We are unconsciously holding emotional charge. And yet we are there under the assumption that the pain is going to kill us if we allow ourselves to feel it. Yet
Yeah.
the body, the psyche is already with that pain. You are already being with it.
Mm,
You just need to approach it with an open heart more consciously. And of course, sometimes it demands that the proper container, the proper outlet be created for it. But this is for people that are dealing with like a great deal of repression, great deal of unprocessed pain that is just scaring the living shit out of them. And that
Right.
is, with that, there is an invitation. If you could really just feel and know already in this moment how your nervous system has had to be strong to support you, and if you could just lean in there and allow it to, to process you in the best of your ability, you would be liberated. So, yeah, that's how I perceive it.
I love what you're sharing. As you're sharing that, it just amplifies the reverence I have for my body so much. I'm a student of
Yeah.
somatic therapy, so we learn a lot about the nervous system, and everything you're saying makes sense. Not always easy to receive. Like, you could hear that saying that's like, it's simple, but it's not always easy. But what you
Oh, yeah.
shared brought up two things, which is something my one of my teachers says. She says pain can be an acronym for pay attention inside now. And
Yeah.
then the second, it reminds me of a Carl Jung quote that's like, what is unconscious must be rendered conscious, otherwise, it'll rule our life and we'll mistake it as fate. And I feel like
Yes.
that piece of us that chooses to ignore it or repress or turn to a pathway in which we can numb out is the bigger toll to pay because energetically and physically eventually it'll catch up with us. We end up suffering, work in constraint all the time, like by these beliefs that if our beliefs create our availability, they actually keep us further away from being exalted in life, free to be our authentic self.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, that is as real as it gets. I really feel like living an unconscious life is the most expensive
Mm.
thing that somebody can do. It's gonna leave you spiritually, emotionally bankrupt. Especially in these times that are like rapidly shifting. I mean, your life, the level of emotional maturity, and I also want to say somatic wisdom, but embracing your light consciously will ask of you to really harness. It is off the charts. And for many people who would be listening to this conversation, they are too conscious to just go out there and create after hearing a pep talk. I often say people who are doing this kind of work, they are way too conscious for their own good.
Mm.
What I mean by that is, one of my hustle bros is about making money and who only cares about like, I just gotta go hustle and bring in, bring money in the bank and stuff like this, and go out there and hear some sort of talk and just go out there in a very disembodied state and go after the money, and he will generate the money. He will generate the funds. He will maybe even thrive in his own way, even though some people might say, yeah, but this is empty success. Fine. For him, this is what he wants. But
Mm.
somebody who is in this kind of work, you are way too conscious for your own good. What I mean by that, you are way too aware of the resistance. And also you want to live life, a full life. It's like full aliveness where your body is on board, where your heart is on board, and that demands that you meet fully the parts of you that are also afraid and in pain. So you cannot have one leg in the conscious life and the other leg out. I don't know how that works. It's like either you choose the path of like clear awareness when you run with it, or you don't even awaken to begin with. So yeah, that's a conscious life. An unconscious life, in my opinion, is very much expensive, spiritually expensive. And I think people who would listen to your show are ones who are not looking for that.
No, and I feel like you could really speak to that because of to circle back to your personal story about how you turned towards a path of what you're doing now from a path where you were doing your economics degree or PhD. There's probably a beautiful financial compensation that comes with choosing that career path. And so I wonder for you, when you look back at the Xavier that was moving through that to the Xavier you are now, what would you have told him back then when he was in the shackles of his shadows and like feeling crazy and his family's questioning and friends are questioning what he's doing? What would you tell him today?
Oh, what I would tell him, I would start with, I bring a lot of humor into how I speak to myself. You are crazy, all right, but that's okay. That's precisely what you need to move forward. Like, you are so nuts. You have no freaking idea. But I wouldn't change that about you.
Mm.
I wouldn't change that about you. And I would just like run with authenticity. It will get a little shaky. It will. You
I
know,
love that.
I don't I don't want to lie to you. I could come out here and tell you that it will be rainbows and sunshine. It will get shaky. You know,
Mm.
some of the relationships you care about the most will get shaky. And, you know, it will also get better. And in the moments where you feel shaky, I could just let it stretch your heart some more. Just let it stretch your heart some more. And please learn faster how to be gentle with yourself,
Hmm.
especially around the areas of your persona that you've learned to judge. They're gonna need so much love, my friend. You like so much love. The level of love they're gonna need, holy shit, like big time. So just when it emerges, when you feel so beat up, when you feel like you're worth nothing, please sit down with these aspects of you and just, if you can just lay your hand on your heart instead of allowing the rampage of the inner critic that is shooting at you, saying you should have, you should have, you should have, you should have. Just take a
Mm.
breath and lay your hand on your heart and just speak gently to yourself. I see you. I know you're scared. And I know you're alone. And I know the people you would have wanted to have by your side at the moment, they are not there. But just keep going. Just keep going. Maybe
Just
take a shower and go to bed. Just keep going. And wake up tomorrow, try again. Wake up tomorrow, try again. Like reminders like that. I wouldn't come and I wouldn't give myself a pep talk because back then, even back then, part of me already knew that, holy crap, I don't know why am I doing that to myself? That was the question. Part of me was like aware. It's like, man, things, and maybe there was a little bit of a projection there, meaning maybe I was expecting way too much for things to be rocky, and that's also what I was reflected. But
mm,
I would lead more with the gentleness. I would anchor more, hey, you know what? This universe is way more benevolent than you think. It is way more benevolent than you think. And as difficult as things are, there are there are angels around you in disguise that will want to support you. You don't have to lead with the thought that I'm going to have to do it all on my own. You don't have to lead with that. And I know trusting people is scary, but just remain open to benevolent outcomes. Just remain open to that. These are the thought forms that I would anchor, but I would still be like, yeah, you're a little nuts, and that's okay. But you keep going.
I love that. And I just want to be mindful of time. Are you okay to go for a bit, five more minutes or 10 more minutes?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I just have a couple more questions, and that was so beautiful. I felt like you were sharing it with me, so I received it also. I wanted to
Mm,
ask you a little bit about parenting because I know you have, is it
yeah,
3 kids or 4?
yeah. Free.
3. I'm wondering
Yes.
how this type of work has weaved your journey as a father and as a partner to your wife, and just how I'm sure as a parent you've come up against moments that have been triggering or frustrating. And
Oh
I'm just
yeah.
wondering for you, for all the parents listening right now, how might anchoring into our heart and connecting with even a mother's love, like if that's accessible for yourself, even, and the love that you've cultivated within yourself as you've trusted your light and work with your light and live your light, how has that influenced your journey as a parent and a partner?
Yeah. The first thing I would say, becoming a parent has influenced first this journey because in 2018, when we conceive, our first son was born in January 2019, but in 2018, when we conceived, I was still tiptoeing. I was like just trying. I was in the world of coaching, but I wasn't really fully in it. I
Mm.
hadn't, it's like you're not all heart into it. I still
Hmm.
had some remnant of clients from the health coaching times, and I was attempting to shift them towards what I was doing already. And some of them were like embracing it, and some of them were just like, man, this is too weird what you're getting into. I was just in here for the health coaching, blah, blah, blah. I'm out type thing. But I was still tiptoeing. I was rebuilding an identity. And as soon as we conceive, there is this fire that takes over me, which is basically, I'm not going to be the example of a dad who will not follow his calling. That is something that I didn't want to be. And it was also a little bit generational because, my dad always wanted to be a artist, a musician, and, a singer. He was an athlete when he was in college. He even participated to the Olympic Games in 1980.
Cool.
And he always felt like he had to give up on all the things that were really meaningful to his heart to take care of his family. And I understand he had 6 kids, and the reality was completely different. Raising kids in Africa in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
that was rough. So I understand that, but I could also see, as the sensitive little guy I was, I could just see the sadness when we would listen to his mixtapes that he had recorded at some point, and we would dance to it. You could always see part of him had hoped it would lead somewhere else,
Yeah.
and I just didn't want to carry the same kind of sadness. I never wanted my family to be the reason why I didn't pursue
Mm.
what I came here to pursue. So that was the first thing. And now parenting, as beautiful as it is, our children express what we repress, you know. The
Yes.
body expresses also what we repress, but you know what? If you want to put that on steroids, become a father, become a mother, become a parent, and you're gonna see these children are gonna express the things that you repress too.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the initial awareness was the person that I was when I am creating, holding space, and facilitating. It was very different than the person that I was when I was parenting. And usually people do not expect that. I was like, in my parenting, what happened is a lot of my conditioning came up again.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the next level of purge, the next level of like shadow integration, where your kids are just you can do shadow integration by yourself and like be in your relationship with your partner, your spouse, and you think, okay, I'm good. You want to
Yeah.
put that on steroids of a smaller human being,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what came up. So it deepened the journey. It really deepened the journey. It has softened me so much more. It has softened me so much more. And it has brought me to this place where, you basically have to look at your children as mini me. I have to look at them as mini me's.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in the moments of like reactivity, in the moments of like where they need emotional support, and in the moments where I can feel like so self-righteous.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I have to sit down and be like, okay, what aspect of me is being reflected here that I don't know how to love yet?
Mm-hmm.
And also, it has increased tremendously. I call it the shepherd consciousness, which is the legacy goes way beyond just making sure they are taken care of, making sure that their needs are met. It goes beyond that. It's like, what does it look like to lead like a new way of being human? What does it look like to be the support for that? Because they have their own guidance, they carry their own missions, they come here with their own like callings and all of that. How can I be a support? How can I equip them? And also,
Mm-hmm.
how can my work be an outlet to leave behind the kind of world that I want them to live in?
Yeah.
How can I equip them emotionally, spiritually for the kind of world that I feel like we are living right now? So it has increased my level of care about
Mm-hmm.
the world, because before it was just like about my path, my personal path. It was just about my alignment with my higher self. And it has made me more of like a humanist. It's like, okay, where's the world actually going? And how can I align my contribution, my work with the bigger, maybe better legacy I can leave for these three beings? That's
Mm-hmm.
how I see it. But beyond everything, there's been the bridge between, the father in me. Also, the father in me, it has evolved that archetype, what it means for me to be a dad,
Mm-hmm.
what it means for me to be a father, what it means for me to model the level of like, you know, the level of relationship with what they perceive as authority. What does it mean for me to kind of like model to them what they get to expect from the world around as well. So there's just so much that goes into it. About parenting itself, I can talk about that in like many, many different layers. What does it mean like for me to model at the same time emotionally safe environment and strong leadership when that's needed as well? You know, and what does it mean to be a calm leader? Which has been a big initiation for me coming from African descent, where usually for us it's like, oh, it's the way of the father, you know, and that's it, period. You know,
Hmm.
it's my way or the highway. You know, I was spanked many times when I was a kid. It's like, don't mess around. If you fuck around, you're gonna find out. It's like, okay, we're gonna find a new way here. So there's been a divine softening for me.
Yeah, it sounds like that. It sounds like it for sure. And it must have been very expansive within the container of your relationship with your partner as well,
Oh
because you
yeah,
both would have to be fully on board. Like love has its own, your relationship with love partners has its own way of revealing our shadow sides, right? So
a
it
great
sounds
deal of it.
a great deal of it. I mean, you just said now you could speak about parenting for hours. I mean, I could go on, and this would probably be a whole other episode, but I really appreciate you touching on that because there's a lot of fathers out there who maybe didn't have the best relationships with their own fathers. And a lot of men, I feel like in this climate, feel like they need to be a man and not show their feelings and they need to provide. And their definition of providing might look like eradicating their own dreams. And I don't think that
Yeah.
is the real definition of providing. And even I don't even know how you could define it because I feel like I'm having a thing with definitions lately where I feel like it's just too restricting to what the actual
Yeah.
experience could lend to. But I really appreciate you speaking to that. I think it's very important, especially for fathers.
Yeah, I think it's really pivotal, you know, and what I've learned throughout this whole thing is no aspect of myself needs to be repressed or put in the dark
Mm,
for me to really expand. What I've noticed is, you know, I still have I have a very stern aspect of me. Like I can be very stern when needed. And at the same time, we can I want to say play to death and laugh to death and like have the moments of like deep emotional bonding and connection. It's like I want the full range. Like I
mm,
want the full range of me in these relationships. And that's what matters to me beyond everything else. And through that is I want to model to them it is safe for you to express your fullness.
mm-hmm,
That's the main thing I want to model to them. It is safe for you to express your fullness. And also, I want to model these moments. You know, it's like, I think encouragement, genuine words of encouragement, received by kids from their caregivers, from a father figure can have like, can save somebody,
mm-hmm.
you know, decades in therapy.
Yes.
Um, and just being able to see, identify these moments where I can sense that they are frail and they don't trust their power and they don't trust that they can. And I'll look at them in the eye and I'll be like, hey, you can do it. And I
Mm,
know you can. And I know you can. And maybe I will even hold space for you to struggle a little bit until you kind of like find it within yourself. Oh, actually, you know you can do it. And I will rejoice with you the moment where you're like, oh shit, I did it. You know, and they build their self-esteem even through that moment. That felt like it was gonna tear them down.
yeah.
To me, that's what it feels like. I want to nourish their strength. You know, it's like for mothers, it's easier to nourish the you know, when they are navigating something challenging and they just need to feel the comfort and they need to feel that kind of cooling energy where they get to relax on. I want to look at them in the moments where strength is needed and I
Yeah.
want to whisper it. Hey, try again. Just try a little bit more this way. You can do it. And sometimes you're going to be like, ah, daddy, 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 I'm not yet. I'm like, okay, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Come over here. Try again this way. Let's try again. Try again. And if you really can't do it, I'll be here. I'll be here.
Yeah.
Come on, try again. These are the moments of like, I don't know. It
They're
just
so
gives so much joy
shifting.
to my heart.
They're so shape shifting, and you need both. You need that comfort of mama, and you need that structure of father. And I just think it's that holding is life changing. Just like you said, it
Yeah,
would save years of therapy just knowing that you were seen and heard in a moment of like intense fragility, you know?
yeah, yeah.
So thank you for saying that. The last thing I
You're
wanted to ask
welcome.
you, I could talk to you for hours, Xavier. We're gonna have to have a part two. Um, but I wanted to ask you how people can find you and work with you because I'm sure after this, everyone is going to want to work with you. And I'm sure you work with many people so far based on what we've talked about today. So, how do we find you?
Well, people can find me on my first, even before that, I want to say thank you for having me. Thank you for this beautiful conversation. I've enjoyed it. Where people can find me on my website is my name, xavierdagba.com. They can find me on Substack at Xavier Dagba. I have a newsletter there, Embodied Light. That's how I call it. They can find me on Instagram. And if they want deeper work, on my website, they will find all of my offerings, my membership community, all of everything that I have to offer is out there. But yeah, I'm not hard to find. You can just look for my name, they'll find me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your light and your work. I am incredibly inspired from our conversation, and I just so deeply appreciate you.
Well, it's a pleasure, Jenny. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.